March 2020, millions of people panic-bought toilet paper. Not because of a supply shortage, but because they saw other people doing it. In 1637, the price of a single tulip bulb in the Netherlands skyrocketed higher than the annual income of a skilled craftsman, not because of intrinsic value, but because of collective hype. Every day, we see terrible ideas become popular, useless products sell out, and factually wrong opinions gain widespread acceptance. And here's the uncomfortable truth. It's happening to you, too. What if I told you that 90% of your most important decisions about your finances, your health, even your core beliefs aren't actually made by you? We pride ourselves on independent thought, but in reality, most of us are flying on autopilot. Welcome to Psych Blueprint. Today, we're exposing the single greatest enemy of critical thinking, the bandwagon effect. And more importantly, we're showing you exactly how to take back control of the cockpit of your mind. To understand why we're so easily influenced, we need to dismantle the most common misconception about conformity. Old paradigm, we tend to think that only weak-willed or uninformed people follow the crowd, that if we were just smarter, we'd be immune. But psychological science reveals a radically different truth. New paradigm conformity isn't a bug. It's a hardwired feature. It's an ancient survival instinct, a cognitive shortcut designed to keep us safe and conserve energy. Imagine you're on the African savannah 100,000 years ago. Suddenly, everyone in your tribe starts running. Do you stop to analyze the situation? No. If you do, you get eaten by the lion. You run first, ask questions later. For millennia, following the herd equaled survival. Our brains evolved to love consensus and hate dissent. Critical thinking is cognitively expensive. Copying others is cheap. We call this mechanism the social autopilot. Sticky concept. The problem is, our brains are still running that ancient survival software in a complex, modern world. The shortcut that once saved us from lions now leads us into bad investments, misinformation rabbit holes, and poor life choices. It's like using an autopilot designed for a straight, empty highway to navigate a busy, hazardous city. Before we can switch it off, we need to understand how it works under the hood. The bandwagon effect, or our social autopilot, is a cognitive bias where we are more likely to believe something or act in a certain way, simply because many other people are doing so. The higher the rate of adoption of an idea, the more valid it seems. Regardless of the actual evidence, it's more than just peer pressure. It runs deeper. Psychologists break down social influence into two main types: informational social influence. The need to be right. This happens when we are uncertain and we believe the crowd knows something we don't. Example, choosing a crowded restaurant. Normative social influence. The need to be liked. This happens when we conform to be accepted or avoid rejection, even if we know the crowd is wrong. Why is this so powerful? It comes down to our neural wiring, the aha moment. Social neuroscience studies have found something fascinating. The brain processes social rejection similarly to physical pain. When we go against the crowd, the brain's pain alarm center activates. Biologically, being isolated is an emergency. Conversely, when we agree with the group, our dopamine reward system kicks in. We feel good, safe, and validated. The social autopilot is essentially our brain trying to avoid pain and seek pleasure. Signature story, the Ash experiments. Let's see this in action. In the 1950s, psychologist Solomon Asch conducted a now famous experiment. He asked subjects to compare the lengths of lines. A very simple task. But there was a catch. Only one person was the real subject. The others were actors instructed to give an obviously wrong answer. Imagine you are that subject. You know clearly that line B is the correct answer. But one by one, everyone else says A. Suddenly, you start doubting yourself. The mental pressure mounts. You feel your heart rate increase. You want to shout B. But you also don't want to look like a fool or disrupt the consensus. The results were staggering. 75% of participants conformed to the crowd. and gave the wrong answer at least once. Even though they knew it was wrong, this is the power of normative influence. We are willing to deny the evidence of our own eyes to fit in. Now, you might be thinking, but what about the wisdom of the crowds? Aren't groups often right? Yes, but there's a crucial distinction. The wisdom of the crowds works when individual decisions are independent of one another. The bandwagon effect occurs when decisions are influenced by each other. As soon as independence is lost, wisdom turns into groupthink. And now, let's talk about the factor that makes this effect 10 times stronger in the digital age. It's the combination of uncertainty and instant connectivity. When a situation is ambiguous or complex, like financial markets or a pandemic, we are far more likely to look to others for cues. Combine that with social media, where we can instantly see what millions of others are thinking, and you have a perfect storm. Algorithms amplify what's popular, creating an illusion of consensus far greater than reality. What are the consequences of this? It shapes our world profoundly. Market bubbles, from tulip mania to the dot-com bubble and recent crypto booms. People buy in because of FOMO, fear of missing out. When the hype outpaces the actual value, the bubble bursts. Political polarization, the social autopilot fuels tribalism. We adopt the beliefs of our in-group without critical examination, leading to echo chambers. Organizational silence in companies. Employees often fail to speak up against bad ideas if they think everyone else is on board. This leads to disastrous decisions. The social autopilot is the enemy of truth and progress. So, how do we take back control? We're about to explore a simple technique that can break this cycle almost immediately. The goal isn't to become a contrarian who rejects everything. The goal is to achieve intellectual liberation. It's the ability to evaluate information objectively and make conscious decisions. Here is your blueprint for disabling the social autopilot. Strategy 1. The isolation test. This is the technique we mentioned earlier. It's your first line of defense. When you feel yourself getting swept up in a trend or a popular opinion, stop and ask yourself this critical question. If I were the only person on the planet, with no knowledge of what anyone else thinks or does, would I still make this decision? Example, everyone is buying a stock. If no one was talking about it, based on the company's fundamentals, would you buy it? If the answer is no, you are in bandwagon territory. Strategy 2. Active dissent seeking. Remember the Ash experiment? The power of the crowd crumbles. As soon as there is even one dissenter, you need to actively seek out that dissent. Diversify your sources. If everyone around you thinks the same, you are in an echo chamber. Actively seek out opposing viewpoints from credible sources. The devil's advocate technique when making group decisions. Assign someone the role of arguing against the consensus. This creates psychological permission to voice skepticism. Strategy 3. Increase cognitive friction. The social autopilot thrives on speed and ease. To combat it, we need to slow things down. The 24-hour rule. If you find yourself getting swept up in a trend or a wave of online outrage, enforce a 24-hour rule. Don't react, don't buy, don't share. This allows the rational part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, to come online. Prioritize accuracy over belonging. Shift your identity from being a loyal member of a group to being a truth seeker. When your identity is tied to the process of thinking, dissent becomes easier. The truth is, going against the grain is hard. It's biologically uncomfortable and socially challenging. There will be times when you feel lonely, when you doubt yourself. But remember why you are doing this. As you start disabling your social autopilot, you'll notice a profound shift. You'll begin making decisions aligned with your values and long-term goals, not the fleeting hype. You'll develop a sense of agency and intellectual liberation that few people achieve. Your life is your flight. You can let the autopilot determine where you go, flying in the familiar patterns of others, and potentially leading to disaster when crisis hits. Or you can take the controls, navigate the complexity of the world with skill and intention. The choice is yours. But now, at least you know where the off switch is. If you found value in this video, share it with one person who needs to hear this message. It's the best way to fight the bandwagon effect. And don't forget to subscribe to Psych Blueprint for more insights into applied psychology to help you master your mind and your life. Thank you for watching.